Hey guys, welcome to Best Movie Recap. Today I am going to explain a 2013 American science fiction movie called Man of Steel. Warning. Spoilers ahead, watch out and take care. Today's story starts on the planet Krypton. Jor-El stands by his wife Lara Van as she is going to give birth to a healthy baby boy named Kal-El who was born naturally, instead of genetic engineering. Later on that day, Jor-El meets with the Kryptonian Council, telling them that Krypton's core is unstable. They ask him if they can evacuate the planet, but he says it's too late for that. Before he can divulge his plan, General Zod and his followers break into the council, murdering one elder. Zod asks Jor-El to join him in preserving the superior bloodline of Kryptonians, but he refuses. While he was taken by Zod's men, he managed to escape with the help of his robot. Outside, Jor-El sees chaos ensuing around the area. He hops on the back of a winged creature named Haraka, which takes him to the Genesis chamber, where little Kryptonian babies are born. Jor-El swims to the central hub and retrieves the codex. He takes it back to the Citadel, where Lara was waiting for him with her baby. They are preparing to place him in a ship that will take him to Earth, but Lara feels much sadness with the fact that the baby will never really know them. Jor-El assures her that he will be well. Then he applies the codex to Kal-El's body and leaves him a key with an S. As they prepare to send him off, Zod and his crew prepare to attack the Citadel. Jor-El puts on his armor and fights several Kryptonians off. Then fight and beat Zod, who pleads with Lara to stop the launch, but she sends him out. Zod screams in fury and kills Jor-El. Then commands one of his own ships to take down Kal-El, but his ship is shot down, and he and his followers are apprehended. After that, Zod and his followers are put on trial for murder and treason, and are sentenced to the Phantom Zone. As he's being taken away, Zod rants out the council and vows to Lara, who is in attendance, that he will find Kal and take back the codex. Zod and his followers are then put into stasis and brought aboard the Black Zero, a gigantic Kryptonian ship that is then placed into the Phantom Zone. Lara later returns home, and as Krypton explodes, she prays for Kal to make a better world. Meanwhile, Kal-El's ship enters the Earth's atmosphere, then lands in the field of farmers in Smallville, Kansas. This field belongs to Jonathan Kent and his wife Martha. 33 years later, Kal-El, who is now known as Clark Kent, is working on a crab boat with other fishermen. They receive a distress signal that an oil rig is on fire. Clark rushes off to save the people trapped in there, and they are amazed to see him walking through fire. The men are rescued, but Clark stays behind to hold back a heavy piece of metal, which falls and takes him into the ocean. At this moment, Clark has a flashback to his childhood in his elementary school class. A teacher asks him a question, but his heightened senses, X-ray vision, and his super hearing make him overwhelmed. Clark gets scared, then runs and hides in the janitor's closet. His teacher tried to open the door, but got burned after touching the knob. Then she called his mother Martha, who comes to school to comfort him. Clark opened the door after Martha helped him to control his powers with breathing and meditation exercises. Going back to the shore, Clark steals some clothes and leaves the town. On the way, he sees a school bus, which reminds him of a day when a tire of the school bus he was on blew out, then ran off over a bridge into the river. Clark, using his super strength, pushed the bus out of the river and stopped it from sinking, revealing his powers to Lana Lang and Pete Ross in the process. Pete's mother later told the Kents about Clark's astonishing feat, but Jonathan denied that there was anything special about their son. After that, Jonathan stressed to Clark the importance of keeping his powers secret, telling him that people are afraid of what they don't understand. When Clark pressed him for answers, Jonathan revealed the Kryptonian space pod Clark arrived in, which he kept hidden under a barn. Then he gave Clark the command key and encouraged him to find out his true origins and why he was sent to Earth, while reassuring him that he will always be his son. Clark is now working in a highway bar, where he overhears some men talking about the military who are looking for a strange object under the ice near the Arctic. Meanwhile, a client starts sexually harassing a waitress. Clark comes to defend her, but the waitress says it's not worth it, but the client pours beer on Clark, who gets angry and walks out, then destroys the truck belonging to that client before skipping the town in the direction of the alien's ship. In the Arctic, The Daily Planet reporter Lois Lane arrives in a helicopter to report on the object found under the ice and has her bags carried by Clark, who is posing as a worker there. The operation is led by U.S. Air Force Colonel Nathan Hardy, who is working with Dr. Emil Hamilton, who is not pleased to see Lois there and tries to get her away, but her clearance allows her to stay. They reveal that imaging has turned up a massive object that's nearly 20,000 years old. Later on that night, Clark away from the military burrows through the ice with his heat vision. Lois spots and follows him. The object turns out to be a large alien spacecraft. Aboard the ship, Clark is accosted by a robot sentry until he inserts the command key into a port, activating the ship's systems. Lois is then attacked by the sentry when she tries to take a picture of it, getting wounded in the process. Clark saves her and cauterizes her wound with his heat vision. He then takes her outside, where she can be found before the ship takes off and flies away. In Metropolis, Lois writes an article about what she saw in the Arctic, but her editor Perry White refuses to publish it because he's worried about what kinds of ramifications this story would have on the world. Lane then gives the story to Glenn Woodburn, who publish it on the internet. Meanwhile, Clark has piloted the spaceship to another remote location in the Arctic, where he is greeted by a holographic projection of Jor-El, who tells Clark the full story of his origins, his birth name, and why he was sent to the Earth. Jor-El reveals that in the distant past, Krypton was once a flourishing civilization and sought to expand themselves in the vastness of space a long time before the human civilization even started. This scout ship Clark found was one of the hundreds launched into the void. However, these grandiose projects died out once the artificial breeding was established and after exhausting all natural resources. Krypton core became unstable. Lara and Jor-El believe that Krypton's artificial breeding and genetic engineering policies led to this downfall, with Kryptonians losing the ability to choose their own lives. Then they conceived Kal to rebel against this system and sent him to Earth to not just escape Krypton's end, but to forge his own path. Jor-El believes humanity has the potential to become as great as Krypton was at its height with Kal's guidance, as he can embody the best of both worlds. Then he gifts him a formal Kryptonian suit with an S symbol. This symbol is reserved for the House of El, and it means hope. After wearing the suit and taking Jor's words of encouragement to keep pushing the limits of his abilities, Clark begins to push his powers, first taking flying leaps, before eventually being able to fly at great speeds, breaking the sound barrier, and flying great distances around the world. Lois continues her investigation of her savior by speaking to the fisherman Clark was working with, then to the adult Pete Ross, who leads her back to the Kent farm, where she speaks to Martha. Lois then goes to a cemetery where Jonathan is buried. Clark finds her there and says he does not want to tell his story. Another flashback shows Clark and Jonathan getting into an argument while driving. A tornado begins to descend, and everybody runs away. Clark runs back to get his dog out of the truck, but Jonathan tells him to take his mother and a little girl to safety while he gets the dog. The dog is safe, but Jonathan's foot is injured by a car that falls on the truck. Clark tries to rescue him, but Jonathan holds his hand out for him to stop. He allows himself to get taken by the tornado just to keep Clark's power secretly, then Clark screams in sorrow. Lane's story hits the internet, and Perry is not happy. She says she will retract the story with the excuse that her leads fell through. Perry suspends her for 2 weeks without pay, but says she's doing the right thing for pulling the story back. Meanwhile, Clark goes back home to his mother and tells her that he find out where he came from and who his parents are. At Nord, General Stanwyck is told about a UFO being spotted. The footage hits the news and is interrupted with a transmission that is broadcast all over the world repeating "You are not alone." The person in the video reveals himself to be General Zod, informing Earth about Kal-El's presence. He issues a warning, saying that if Kal-El does not turn himself in within 24 hours, the people of Earth will suffer. The next day, Woodburn is interviewed about the aliens and drops Lois's name and reveals that she knows where to find Kal-El. Perry tries to warn her, but she is arrested by Hardy and the FBI before she manages to escape. Back in Smallville, Clark is in a church hearing the news. Then he has another flashback, remembering when several bullies challenged him to a fight, but they were stopped by Jonathan. Pete Ross even helped Clark back on his feet. Clark speaks to a priest regarding his situation, revealing he is the one everyone is looking for. Clark feels that the humans can't be trusted, but the priest says that he must take a leap of faith, and the trust will come. After that, Clark dressed as Superman then meets with Stanwyck and offers to turn himself in on the condition that Lois will be safe. He meets with her in an interrogation room, and he tells her that the S on his chest is a symbol of hope. Then he said to Dr. Hamilton, Hardy, and Stanwyck, "You're scared because you can't control me. You don't, and you will never. But that doesn't mean I'm your enemy." In the middle of the desert, Zod's ship lands, where they are greeted by Faora Hull, who demands that Lois come along with Clark. Despite Hardy's protests, Lois accepts, and as they're being brought aboard the Black Zero, Kal slips her the command key. Lois is given a visor to help her breathe, as the atmospheric composition aboard the Black Zero is toxic to humans. At this moment Kal collapses, weakened and coughing up blood, because his body is adapted to Earth's atmosphere. He is strapped down to a table in his weakened state and meets General Zod in a mental projection. He explains that, after he and his followers escaped the Phantom Zone and repurposed the Black Zero's Phantom Zone projector into a hyperdrive, they searched through abandoned Kryptonian outposts for supplies and other possible survivors. And due to Clark's activation of the old Kryptonian ship, they picked up the signal it put out and tracked it to Earth. Zod offers Kal the chance to bring Krypton back. However, Zod plans to use Earth as the foundation, which will wipe out all of humanity. Kal refuses to go along with this. And at this moment Zod reveals that he killed Jor-El and then leaves to search for the Codex. Meanwhile, Lois activates the command key. The holographic projection of Jor-El takes over the Black Zero's systems, changing the atmosphere to give Clark his powers back. He also helps Lois to escape the ship, giving her instructions on how to send the invaders back to the Phantom Zone. She boards an escape pod, which gets damaged by one of Zod's followers. Kal escapes, then has a final word with his father, who encourages him to save Lois and all of humanity. He flies out and saves Lois before her pod burns up and crashes. Meanwhile, Zod goes to the Kent farm and interrogates Martha to find the Codex. He has Faora look in the ship, but she cannot find it. When Zod threatens Martha further, Clark flies in and attacks Zod for trying to threaten his mother. He disables Zod's helmet, which overwhelms his senses as it did to Clark when he was young. Faora and another Kryptonian named Namek come in to attack, but the military fights back. A battle ensues, with Faora taunting Clark with her advanced strength and capabilities. Namek takes down a helicopter with Hardy in it, but Clark saves one soldier, as well as Hardy, who is almost killed by Faora. She is taken out by a missile, but it is not killed and taken back into the ship. Hardy acknowledges that Clark is not an enemy, and Clark thanks him for that. Going back to the ship, Zod learns out that the Codex lies within Clark's DNA, and he does not need him alive to extract it from him. He orders the world engine to be released. This causes one part of his ship to fly down to the Indian Ocean, while the main part descends upon Metropolis. Dr. Hamilton determines that Zod is attempting to recreate the Kryptonian atmosphere and trying to kill off the humans. He and Stanwyck are informed of Superman's arrival, as they now refer to him. He and Lois plan on using his old ship to collide with Zod's, as it is powered by a phantom drive, which they realize would open a black hole. Superman flies off to the Indian Ocean while Lois, Hamilton, and Hardy take the ship to Metropolis. Zod goes to the Genesis chamber to repopulate the planet with other Kryptonians. After arguing with the holographic projection of Jor-El, he carries on with the plan. Meanwhile, Superman makes it to the world engine, which attacks him as he is vulnerable to it, but after few tries, he manages to destroy it. At the same time, Zod's ship is destroying Metropolis. Perry and two other Daily Planet members run from the chaos. Lois tries to activate the ship with the key, but it won't go in. Faora and the other villains attempt to attack, but Hamilton notices that the key won't go until he turned the hull of the ship. Then the key goes in, activating the ship. At the same time, Zod comes in with the Genesis chamber, but Superman flies in to stop him. Zod tells him if he destroys the ship, he destroys Krypton. Superman hesitates, then said Krypton already had his chance and destroy the ship with his heat vision. Faora attempts to kill Hardy again, but he tells her a statement she made earlier, a good death is its own reward. As the ship is activated, Lois is pushed out of the jet while Hardy flies the jet into Zod's main ship, causing the Phantom Zone to be open and sending Faora and her crew back there once and for all. Superman comes down with Lois and sees that Zod is still alive. He attacks Superman after stating that everything he had done was for the greater good of Krypton. They engage in a battle that causes much more destruction to Metropolis, leading them to crash into a building. Zod attempts to fry a family of 4 with his heat vision, but Superman pleads with him to stop. When Zod refuses, he sees no other way out, and he brutally snaps Zod's neck, killing him. Superman cries out in regret as Lois comes in to comfort him. Few weeks later, Stan Wick and his adjutant Major Ferris find Superman downing an Air Force drone. Superman claims that he knows they had sent it to find his home on Earth, but he wants the search to stop. He vows that he will continue to fight for what is right and the security of Earth. The general questions Superman's commitment, to which Clark replies that he's from Kansas and can be trusted. As he flies away, the general's adjutant smiles. Clark goes back to Martha, and they both know that Jonathan would have been proud to see the man he became. Martha asks what Clark will do now, and he says he will get a job where nobody would question him for going to strange places. Then we see him in the Daily Planet building, being introduced to Lois Lane as the paper's newest reporter. He is now sporting a pair of black-rimmed glasses, but Lois recognizes him, then welcomes him to the Daily Planet. Thanks for watching. If you liked the video, put a like and share it. Also, don't forget to subscribe for more. Have a great day.